While Caitlin is fantastic and I think she's going to have an incredible career in the WNBA, there are women that were worthy of coverage prior to her arriving, and I just will not be silenced when it comes to that.
Here we go again. Why is Caitlin Clark popular?
Caitlin Clark is only popular because she is white. That is a narrative that is very popular among the morons. Major moron, Monica McNutt, how she has a job, I absolutely know, at ESPN.
The one thing that I cannot deny is the amount of little girls that were showing up to follow her.
Why her?
Well, but she was a white girl from the middle of America.
You think anybody cares if Dejounte Carrington knocks Kennedy Carter on her ass? No. You think anybody cares if Angel Reese misses her next 6 layups, falls down, shows her ass, and claims sexism? No. We only care that Caitlin Clark is playing. We only care that Caitlin...
According to the transcript, the controversy surrounding Caitlin Clark eventually expanded beyond criticism from opposing players or debates over officiating and became intertwined with broader arguments about media coverage itself. The narration claims that certain commentators repeatedly framed Clark's unprecedented popularity through the lens of race rather than basketball, arguing that her rapid rise reflected demographic appeal more than athletic excellence. According to the source, supporters increasingly rejected that interpretation, insisting that Clark's record-breaking television ratings, sold-out arenas, merchandise sales, and nationwide popularity were driven by her style of play, long-range shooting, court vision, competitiveness, and ability to create memorable moments on the court. The transcript argues that this disagreement gradually evolved into one of the most polarizing conversations surrounding the WNBA, dividing fans, analysts, and media personalities over whether Clark's success should primarily be viewed as a basketball phenomenon or through broader social discussions. Within the narrative presented by the source, that disagreement became the foundation for an even larger controversy involving media responsibility, public perception, and the treatment of one of the league's fastest rising stars. According to the narration, the dispute intensified after comments attributed to ESPN analyst Monica McNutt were interpreted by some viewers as suggesting that Clark's popularity was significantly influenced by her identity rather than solely by her performance. The transcript portrays many Clark supporters as viewing those remarks as dismissive of her accomplishments, arguing that millions of people were tuning in because of extraordinary basketball rather than demographic factors. The narration repeatedly emphasizes the belief that fans were investing hours watching Clark because of her passing ability, shooting range, competitive style, and impact on the game, not because of racial considerations. According to the source, frustration continued to build as supporters argued that Clark's achievements, including increased attendance, television ratings, and merchandise demand, represented measurable basketball success that deserved recognition independent of political or cultural narratives. The transcript presents this disagreement as a growing divide between large portions of Clark's fan base and several media voices, with each side interpreting her popularity through dramatically different perspectives. The transcript then escalates the story by claiming that tensions eventually reached the point where Clark allegedly decided to confront what she believed were
but it's how everyone else gets.
Fever have their largest lead of the night.
According to the narration, this conflict evolved from criticism on television into what it characterizes as a major legal confrontation involving accusations that misleading narratives had damaged Clark's public image while simultaneously insulting many of her supporters.
It's just good ball movement,
good spacing. The source frames this alleged dispute as a significant turning point, arguing that the issue was no longer simply about sports commentaries, but about the responsibility of influential media figures when discussing athletes whose careers are followed by millions of viewers. Throughout this section, the narration repeatedly presents Clark as someone who remained relatively restrained in public despite persistent criticism, suggesting that supporters believed there eventually came a point where continued silence was no longer viewed as the appropriate response. Within the narrative itself, this alleged legal escalation is portrayed as evidence that the conflict between Clark and portions of the sports media had reached an entirely different level, according to the transcript. Supporters also rejected the argument that Clark's popularity could be explained primarily through race by pointing to other highly accomplished players who had not produced the same commercial impact despite successful professional careers. The narration argues that Clark's influence stemmed from a combination of extraordinary collegiate success, an entertaining style of play, national visibility, and an ability to attract both longtime basketball followers and entirely new audiences to the WNBA. The source repeatedly references dramatic increases in television audiences, ticket demand, sponsorship opportunities, merchandise sales, and overall league attention as evidence that Clark represented something unique within the modern sports landscape. According to the narration,
Natasha Howard with a beautiful dive to the rim.
Results demonstrated that her popularity reflected an
Sophie
unusually
Cunningham
rare
smothering
combination of
defense on
athletic
Alicia
excellence and
Gray.
entertainment value rather than any single
The double
demographic
team
factor.
comes over for BG. She has
Whether or
5
not
seconds
that
to work with.
interpretation was
In and
universally
out.
accepted, the transcript
Bree Jones
consistently
tried to get
presents
it
it as the dominant viewpoint among Clark's supporters throughout the controversy. The narration also argues that Clark's influence extended well beyond regular season competition and into nearly every commercial aspect of the WNBA. According to the source, even league events such as the WNBA draft experienced increased attention and ticket demand because fans wanted opportunities to see Clark, regardless of whether she was competing on the court or simply appearing during broadcasts and promotional activities. The transcript portrays her presence as one of the league's strongest economic drivers, claiming that supporters viewed Clark as the central figure responsible for attracting new audiences who had previously shown little interest in women's professional basketball. Within the narrative, this commercial success further reinforced the frustration expressed by many fans whenever discussions about Clark shifted away from basketball accomplishments and toward debates over identity or politics. According to the source, supporters believe that measurable audience growth provided stronger evidence of her impact than any media narrative attempting to explain why so many people had become invested in following her career. Ultimately, the transcript frames the controversy as a defining moment in the relationship between athletes, media organizations, and the rapidly changing business of professional sports.
When all else fails.
According to the narration, the central debate was never simply about one television segment or one controversial comment, but about whether extraordinary athletic achievement would receive recognition based primarily on performance or become overshadowed by broader cultural arguments. The source concludes that Clark's supporters viewed the situation as a test of fairness, arguing that unprecedented success on the basketball court should remain the primary focus when evaluating one of the most influential young players in the sport.
3 Liberty players in double digits as the quick response from Cunningham.
Commercial growth or public perception.
That's blocked by Howard.
They brought it over so Dantas plays her on the front side, gets to the bottom, and there comes the help with Howard. BG puts it up. It almost didn't matter, the defense.
Women's basketball, according to the transcript. The controversy surrounding Caitlin Clark eventually expanded beyond criticism from opposing players or debates over officiating and became intertwined with broader arguments about media coverage itself.
Doing it again, hits the 3.
The narration claims that certain commentators repeatedly framed Clark's unprecedented popularity through the lens of race rather than basketball, arguing that her rapid rise reflected demographic appeal more than athletic excellence. According to the source, supporters increasingly rejected that interpretation, insisting that Clark's record-breaking television ratings, sold-out arenas, merchandise sales, and nationwide popularity were driven by her style of play, long-range shooting, court vision, competitiveness, and ability to create memorable moments on the court. The transcript argues that this disagreement gradually evolved into one of the most polarizing conversations surrounding the WNBA, dividing fans, analysts, and media personalities over whether Clark's success should primarily be viewed as a basketball phenomenon or through broader social discussions. Within the narrative presented by the source, that disagreement became the foundation for an even larger controversy involving media responsibility, public perception, and basketball accomplishments are presented as the central explanation for her popularity, while the broader media debate is portrayed as distracting attention from what supporters viewed as obvious evidence of generational talent. The narration suggests that frustration continued to build because many fans believed measurable achievements were being overshadowed by discussions that, in their view, minimized Clark's accomplishments. As that frustration intensified, the transcript presents the disagreement as evolving into a much larger conflict over how sports media should discuss athletes whose influence extends beyond the boundaries of the game itself. According to the narration, the dispute intensified after comments attributed to ESPN analyst Monica McNutt were interpreted by some viewers as suggesting that Clark's popularity was significantly influenced by her identity rather than solely by her performance. The transcript portrays many Clark supporters as viewing those remarks as dismissive of her accomplishments, arguing that millions of people were tuning in because of extraordinary basketball rather than demographic factors. The narration repeatedly emphasizes the belief that fans were investing hours watching Clark because of her passing ability, shooting range, competitive style, and impact on the game, not because of racial considerations.
Sweet dish
According to the
inside
source,
for
frustration
Timpson
continued
Phoenix
to build as
to get on
supporters
her, and then
argued
the
that Clark's
penetration right here,
achievements,
little wraparound,
including increased
little book,
attendance,
but
television ratings,
Phoenix doing a
and
nice job on the
merchandise
boards. We
demand,
talked about that,
represented
leading by
measurable
10.
basketball success
Wow,
that
7 to
deserved
17.
recognition independent of political or
Look at
cultural
all the
narratives.
stats that you love as
The transcript
Cunningham
presents this
buries
disagreement as a
staying
growing
hot.
divide between
Buries
large
another
portions of
triple.
Clark's
It's a
fan
tough call,
base and
and
several
Kyle,
media
here's going to
voices,
see the shot
with
by the
each side
three-pointer
interpreting her
against Copper.
popularity through dramatically different perspectives. Within the narrative,
Cunningham on the drive,
supporters
gets to the
argued
rim.
that Clark's influence could be
Almost
observed in
another
objective
offensive
numbers
rebound,
rather
though,
than
by Boston,
subjective
but Seattle has
interpretations.
it.
Every
Ooh, there's a
nationally
wolf right
televised
there, and
appearance
it's stolen
attracted
away.
unusually high viewership. Road
Sadly,
arenas
tough
experienced
shot.
attendance spikes whenever
Wasn't
Indiana
square,
visited,
and here comes
conversations
Indiana.
surrounding women's
Cunningham,
basketball
another
increasingly
three.
revolved around Clark's
Oh my
performances.
goodness, Sophie
According to the
Cunningham!
transcript,
Indiana's been able to get
fans
the
believe
fast
those
break going
measurable
off the
outcomes
defensive
demonstrated
boards.
that audiences
They
were
are
responding
running, and
primarily
Sophie
to basketball
Cunningham,
excellence.
she is
The
shooting
narration
5 of
repeatedly
6 from
portrays
threes.
Clark as a player whose
Now, her just
combination of
adjusting to
scoring
not
ability,
starting games,
passing
coming off the
creativity,
bench.
leadership, and
Cunningham
competitive
draws the
personality
defense.
naturally attracted widespread
Rolls in the
attention.
corner three.
As a result, supporters interpreted media discussions that emphasized identity over performance as diminishing years of athletic development and unprecedented on-court production.
Cole running the
According
left-hand
to the
side, dumps
source,
it back to
this disagreement
Cunningham.
ultimately became one of the defining controversies surrounding
And off the
Clark's
Chicago
rise,
turnover.
extending well
Yeah,
beyond
just
individual
unselfish
interviews
basketball.
and
That's a
becoming part of a
textbook.
broader
Give it,
public
go. Give it right
conversation
back.
about sports coverage, athlete recognition, and the responsibility of influential commentators.
Cunningham a deep three.
The transcript then escalates the story by claiming that tensions eventually reached the point where Clark allegedly decided to confront what she believed were repeated false or unfair portrayals of her reputation. According to the narration, this conflict evolved from criticism on television into what it characterizes as a major legal confrontation involving accusations that misleading narratives had damaged Clark's public image while simultaneously insulting many of her supporters.
Clark,
the source frames this alleged dispute as a significant turning point, arguing that the issue was no longer simply about sports commentary, but about the responsibility of influential media figures when discussing athletes whose careers are followed by millions of viewers. Throughout this section, the narration repeatedly presents Clark as someone who had remained relatively restrained in public despite persistent criticism, suggesting that supporters believed there eventually came a point where continued silence was no longer viewed as the appropriate response. Within the narrative itself,
right here,
this alleged
waiting,
legal escalation
and then
is portrayed
Timpson
as
just
evidence
times
that
it
the conflict
perfectly.
between
Gets a
Clark
little
and portions of the
separation from
sports media
Dolson,
had reached an entirely
and this
different
is the
level.
best vertical on the
The
team.
transcript further suggests that many supporters viewed the alleged confrontation as symbolic rather than purely personal, arguing that it represented broader concerns about fairness in media coverage of athletes. According to the narration, fans believed repeated discussions centered on race, politics, or cultural symbolism distracted from Clark's actual performances and achievements. The source characterizes the controversy as an example of how modern sports conversations increasingly extend beyond competition itself, becoming intertwined with larger societal debates that often dominate headlines. Whether describing criticism, public reactions, or the alleged legal response, the narration consistently frames the situation as evidence that Clark's extraordinary popularity has transformed her into one of the most closely scrutinized figures in American sports, where every statement, interview, and media appearance generated immediate national attention and intense